The opinions expressed on this program are those of the program host and guest and are not necessarily those of this station, management, staff, and sponsors. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time now for the Crown Car Care Show. Call in with questions and comments, 220-9788, 220-WSTU. Now, here's your host.
Mr. Todd.
Well, hello, everybody.
How are you?
Super. It's March 28th, 2019. My gosh, the month of January is up, Greg. It's over.
March 29th.
Right?
Oh, wow.
I know.
You're looking at the baseball schedule already.
I am. You had said that, Greg is the owner of this radio station here.
No, my wife is.
Right, that's right. Greg is he's assistant like I am in my world. And it's a fabulous day today. We have him as he's running the board. He's my guest on the show today. As you all know, Frank is up in my co-host is up in Michigan. He had some family concerns, and he should be back, I'm going to assume, next week. And we just give him Godspeed and everything, all our blessings with him up there in that cold state of Michigan. I know he's had to get up there fast, and I'm sure he's wants to get home fast, but he has a lot of things to take care of up there, and all of our prayers are with him.
Yep,
absolutely.
Likewise.
Yep. So this is a Crown Car Care Radio Hour. As you all know, every week we do this show. We have two fabulous locations here in Martin County. We have a location on Cove Road, almost in the Hope Sound, and we have a location over there in Palm City. Two locations to serve all of Martin County. We've been in business, 13 years. My Cove Road location's been in business 11 years. Mike over there at the Cove Road location, what a guy he is. He's been with me since the beginning. We have a great crew over there. We can help you with anything from wiper blades to setting the radio, setting your clock. If you need a tire rotation and oil change, if you need that air conditioning fixed, well, today I don't think you need your air conditioning fixed. I think you need some heat today, but we can help you out.
Can you turn on a car?
Well, we can turn a car on
with
too.
all the new technology now. I think that's the big challenge.
Can we get it to run? Yeah. Absolutely. But that location is a big location. We're almost at the inlet there, going into Port Salerno, right on the left. If you're coming from US 1, about a mile and a half in, you can't miss us. Over there in Palm City, we're near the Turnpike entrance, and we have a big location there. Chris is over there running the show. Any given day, you can find me over there too, Todd. I'll answer all your questions. I'll take your phone calls. If you want to come in and talk to us, we'll talk. My favorite donuts are Boston cream. If you hint. But we can assist you. We open at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we're there usually till 5:30 at night. Appointments on Saturday. And there is a number you can reach us at. It's 772-781-8000. 772-781-8000. If you call that number anytime, we'll be able to answer your questions, schedule your next appointment. If you have a good joke to tell us, we'd love to hear it. Either Chris or Joan will answer the phone. If you need to talk to me, they'll get me. Sometimes I'm under the hood of a car and I might not be able to answer it, but I certainly will get back with you by the end of the day. Today's going to be a real good day. It's a special day. Greg, the owner, his wife owns the radio station, but he's got quite a special past. He's been involved in baseball since he was a youth. I've always loved hearing the stories, and I think a lot of the listeners out there would love to hear some stories from Greg right now. And I think I'd like to ask him a couple questions, and I know he'd be willing to answer them because he loves baseball as much as we all do. Greg, when did you first start? When did the love of the sport first come into you?
Oh, Little League. There's no doubt about it. We had our Catholic elementary school played in a little CYO Catholic Youth Organization League. Yeah, we had our own Little League, and it was then. And all of a sudden, I used to deliver the Los Angeles Times papers.
Okay, yeah.
And one of the guys who used to get the newspaper, was a crazy Los Angeles Angels manager at the time, Gene Mock, who wound up becoming manager at Philly. So
you delivered his newspaper.
I delivered his newspaper.
Oh, wow.
So it was really funny when all of a sudden we opened the ESPN LA office in 1981, and I was covering a Gene Mauch news conference, and so I would ask him a question, and he'd say, "Okay, paper boy." Well, there's only two people in the room who understand that, and a couple of the LA Times writers are going, "What? You're television? What is he talking about?
Paperboy." Oh,
you
that's
know,
great
like,
story.
Oh yeah, and it's like I used to deliver his paper,
and he
they
saw
said,
you
"No
going
way."
up through and doing what you do.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was so funny. It's what a good man. What a real good man. And of course, he worked for Mr. Autry, which he was just off the charts. But it started really early for me. This was before the Dodgers and the Giants moved west.
Yes.
So it was 54, I think.
I was just going to ask you the year 1954. People out there
was 1954. Yeah, and so I was asked by someone, I think in our school, would you like to be a bat boy for the Hollywood Stars?
Oh my gosh!
Oh my God! Yeah, and there was this public relations guy for the Hollywood Stars who would be instrumental in my life several years later, Irv Case, who said, we're looking for a full-time ball boy. And so I asked my mom and dad, I said, can you drive me over to Gilmore Stadium and I'll be a ball boy. So my dad got on my birthday, an autographed baseball with all of the 1954 Hollywood Stars, of which I think 2 or 3 in the Hall of Fame now.
Yes, sir.
Dale Long was among them too. And oh yeah, it was great. It was a great time.
And you must have met some players.
Oh yeah. Well, a little bit later on.
Yes.
We had this young kid who was tattooing the outfield walls, and a young guy who everybody called Bobby, Roberto Clemente. And he just had a cup of coffee with that AAA team. I mean, he was going to Pittsburgh. And there was no doubt about it. And great player.
Some great personalities you've met.
Oh yeah, very, very fortunate.
And now as you moved upwards in your age, I can remember a story that Frank, my co-host on the radio show, always tells me that when he was younger, he remembers hearing, Greg, your first, is that true? Your first radio broadcast. I to this day, he tells me this story that he heard you for the first time on the radio. Is that true?
First time, if you want to call it a play-by-play gig. Yes. Yeah,
this is great.
Very true. And it was the Detroit Tiger Radio Network.
Yep. And that's where Frank is from Detroit.
Frank is from Detroit.
Yep.
And Ernie Harwell, the late Ernie Harwell, Mr. Harwell was so good to me from the time I was.
Did he took you under his wing?
He did. 14 years of age was the first time I ran into Ernie. And what he would do is sit next to me. I was in the back row at Dodger Stadium. It was great. And he would just write down stuff. And he had a tablet, legal size tablet, and it said things to do for next year. And so, okay. So when I was 15, he did the same thing, 16.
Yeah.
So then he came to me and said, okay. And at this point in time, I was doing some pre and post for Armed Forces Radio and Television.
Oh, and now let me just clarify this. It wasn't easy getting into radio.
Oh no,
back then
you had to be in the union.
Well, I was going to say you had to be in the union, so
you couldn't get into the union. Yeah. Oh yeah. It was.
You were a scab.
It was close. Well, and that's why when they introduced me for the Tigers gig.
Yes.
It was the kid.
The kid,
because they would have gotten in trouble too.
Right.
So, and as it turned out, Mr. Harwell had his analyst, Bob Sheffing, great manager in his day with the Cubs. His father passed away in Mesa, Arizona, so he had to go to the funeral. So Mr. Harwell was all by himself, and there was a doubleheader with the Angels. So he came to me and said, look, if the second game goes long, I've got to go do some television commercials in San Francisco tonight. And I'm going to need you to finish the game, and do the post game. So I'm sitting there.
You're saying, oh my gosh,
crazy.
And you really hadn't done it up to this point.
Oh no.
This is like you getting thrown in the hot seat.
Oh yeah. I mean, I had done basketball at the time,
but this is big time.
No, but are you kidding? There's 100 and some odd stations on the network.
Oh my god!
There's this teenager that's going to do
the kid. The kid.
Oh yeah.
Or earlier it was the paper boy.
Kind of graduated from.
You graduated from the paper boy to the kid.
Oh yeah.
This is really good stuff. Yeah, Frank he's told me this story twice. I know of, and I know Greg a couple of weeks ago you had spoken at our
MCB
meeting, and you had brought up that story again. And I find it so interesting that I hear many of your stories as you've been telling them just now. And it seems like a lot of the people you meet end up in your life again later. I've noticed.
That's so true.
Am I right on that?
Oh yeah.
Like you talk about delivering the paper to the.
Oh yeah, sure.
He ended up being in your life later, and it's not many people have that. Shall I say luck or opportunity to have somebody else or somebody enter their life further to enhance their own success later in life. It's a big deal. It says something about the character of you, and it says something about how you treat yourself and other people in life, that you can meet somebody and then all of a sudden that person, if not pivotal, or is a catalyst in many of your future successes. It seems like that is a common weave in your story.
Oh yeah, Irv Case was one of them. I mean, I figure, okay, he was with the Hollywood Stars back in 1954 when I was a ball boy there.
Yeah.
And fast forward years later, he was the one who initially gave me a press pass to practice play-by-play in the last row up at Angel or Dodger Stadium.
Right. And that's how that story just
played out. That story played out.
So it's interesting. And I don't know if it's common to radio. It just seems that it really worked out quite well for you.
Oh yeah. There's no doubt.
I mean, I can say in my life, I've had many things like that happen myself, but nothing to the frequency or to the magnitude that you've had. And I don't think many people have either. It is very interesting, the story.
But there are very few people that could ever say a chicken got him a network gig.
Well, I got to hear this one.
Do you remember Teddy Giannola's the San Diego Chicken?
I do not.
Okay. He, at the time,
enlighten us and tell us.
He was with a radio station in San Diego.
Okay.
And actually, when I had interviewed Teddy to be one of our sports interns at Channel 39 in San Diego, the NBC station. So anyway, he came to me and he said, Greg, I don't think I'm going to have time to do it because I just got hired by KGB Radio. I said, what are you going to do? And he said, I'm going to be a chicken. I said, what the heck are you talking about? And he said, I'm going to be a chicken and they're going to pay me. I said, oh, okay. Well, you wouldn't make anything as an intern here, but go for it.
Yeah.
So anyway, he went on his way and then, of course, was very famous in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was this instance where the San Diego Padres wanted to hire him full time. Well, radio station didn't like that, and there was a lawsuit, and it got really ugly very quick. And in the process, I had started doing some features for the NBC Game of the Week and for a show called Grandstand. Again, you mentioned people that in my life
that have they show up later.
Then they show up later. Lee Leonard, the late Lee Leonard, who just passed away 2 weeks ago. One of our original Sports Center anchors at ESPN. But anyway, I was doing some features for them, and all of a sudden there's this grisly trial in San Diego. It was the Great Chicken Trial.
Oh.
Well, Teddy shows up in the courtroom. And at the time, there were no cameras in the courtroom.
Right.
This is back in the 70s. And so all of a sudden, I hired Elizabeth Williams, who was an artist for NBC in Los Angeles, KNBC. And so she was doing the artwork in this. Teddy gets called to the stand. He's wearing a plastic bag, just a bag on his head.
Yes.
So nobody knew who he was. And so anyway, here's Teddy testifying on the stand, and I put together this totally whacked out story, and so get this phone call after it aired on Channel 39, and it was Brian Gumbel in L.A. going, "What the hell was that?" He said, "I just saw some chicken on the stand." And I said, "Yeah,
chicken on the stand.
Great chicken. This is a great
chicken trial."
And so anyway, little did I know that, and the Brian would go back and do the weekend shows in New York, that he took it with him and gave it to Scotty Connell, who was the executive producer of NBC Sports. And then I was pretty much cemented to 2 features for that weekend. Sports stuff. And and so for all intents and purposes, the chicken got me the network gig.
That's fabulous. Fabulous story. And you've met Brian Gumbel.
Oh yeah, I know Brian very well. Yeah, well, see, we used to have in the not California, it was the entire Pacific Coast. They had what they call a pack feed with NBC. So they would see everything we would do in San Diego, and likewise we would see everything they would do. And, and we were so close anyway. We divided a lot of stuff, although we were the non-union arm of NBC. But anyway, they used a lot of our stuff, and so it was a few weeks after Brian had taken that back, and got a call from Scotty, and just said, "Okay, you're there."
Oh, that's good.
So yeah, it was fun. That was in 78. And we had a sportscaster in San Diego by the name of Charlie Jones. God love him. He's passed away. Lived in La Jolla. And never did a football game in San Diego. It was he and Dick Enberg used to laugh about that. That NBC was not happy till I could send them both to the moon for an assignment. So they never, and both of them lived in San Diego, and they never did a game in San Diego. It was great. But Charlie told me, he said, "Something's going on." He said, "I can't tell you what it is, but there's a lot of weirdness at NBC." And he said, "I've heard that there's something going to happen on cable." I said, "Really?" So, yeah, the rest is history. I get this phone call, and it was Scotty. And he said, "I'm no longer at NBC. I'm at ES." It was ESP. ESP what Mr. Rasmussen had mentioned at the very beginning. They added ESPN later. But yeah. And that was it. And I was the token West Coaster of the original Sports Center.
Why don't we take a break, Greg, and we'll come back. And I'd like to ask you a question about seeing the behind-the-scenes players, what they were like.
Oh,
there's some good stories on that.
Let me see. I'll have to think about which ones we can air. We are back in the Crown Car Care Hour.
Woo. Greg, one of my favorite movies of all time, I'll have to say, is with Tim Robbins and Susan Sarandon in the movie Bull Durham.
It's all true.
And I think I think what really is the charm of that movie is not so much their characters and what they did. We know they both stole the show, and they rightfully so. They were the stars, but it was that life of the baseball player, that getting on the bus and going from town to town, and maybe not making a lot of money, but doing it for the love of the game. I envision that back when you first started, when you were the paper boy, or you were the boy, or the kid.
Oh yeah.
How'd the players travel around then? Was it by bus? Were many of the players not making a lot of money? And if they weren't, did they have a difficult time surviving? Can you give us any insight on that, Greg, or maybe some stories on it?
Well, by bus, by train.
Right. They weren't flying. I don't think they were flying in the beginning.
No.
They weren't flying.
See, what made expansion in baseball possible was a jet plane.
Right.
And Walter O'Malley was really tuned into that, the Dodgers owner. He was very much aware, he had friends at Boeing, that they were developing this coast-to-coast plane.
That's right.
Will. So that made that possible. And he was friends. Horace Stoneham wasn't.
And also the
doing
network
well.
the network stations being able to transmit the signals coast to coast. You even be able technology
Yeah.
Again, technology.
Yeah. Well, getting back to Ernie Harwell again, Ernie tells his story in our Dodger 100-year show that he said, Mrs. Harwell and I were the only two people that heard the alternate Bobby Thompson home run call. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said,
interesting.
NBC Sports was doing a closed circuit telecast of that game to practice televising baseball games.
Oh.
So this was in 1951.
Okay.
And so Ernie had the play-by-play call. And I said, so I've never heard it. He said, nobody has. It was never recorded. I'm thinking, oh no, are you kidding me?
Wow.
Because you hear the Giants call, the very famous play-by-play call, and I remember talking to Vin Scully about that call, and Vinny said, "Boy, I'm glad I've never been remembered for something like that, because he obviously lost control when he was doing, with Giants win the pennant, and going crazy."
Yes,
Russ Hodges. Yeah.
So the players, let's just take, for example, the year 1955. You had the stars of the game, and then you had I'm going to call them the B and C players that were still in Major League Baseball, but they were not the big guys. How did they survive? What did they make a good living? Was it a struggle for them? And the only thing that kept them on board was love of the game. It's like today I have this vision that everybody's making decent money. The players, even the benchers that never play, are still making money that you and I probably could never dream of in my whole life.
Thank you, Players Union. Yeah. No.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. Well, it was interesting. In the Dodger 100 years, Buzzy Bavasi was laughing about it. Of course, Buzzy was this tough guy anyway, and he got into this whole contract negotiation thing with Duke Snyder, and Snyder wanted $1,200 raise, $1,200. And of course, everybody had to work. I mean, once the season was over, they had to go work for a living. That's why Jackie Robinson was.
Wait, let's just rehash that a minute. So, when the season was over, you had to go get another job.
Oh yeah, you bet. Yeah. Oh yeah, and Buzzy was laughing. He said, "Yeah, I told that Snyder guy, and he led the league, and this, that, and the other thing." And said, "Well, maybe 600, but you're not worth an extra 1,200 a year." And the guy was making 6,000 a year or something. It was amazing when you think about the old timers, how little they
made. It was the spirit and love of the game.
Oh yeah. And
right. I mean, that's what kept them on. I mean, it
sure.
wasn't certainly for this high hope of making big bucks.
Oh yeah.
It was not. The big bucks weren't there, and I don't even think the big bucks were with some of the stars that wasn't. Big bucks.
Oh, definitely not. No. And what was really strange, especially early on with the Dodgers, they bring in this young black kid from UCLA. Jackie Robinson.
I was just going to ask you, tell me the Jackie Robinson story. You read my mind.
Just horrific stuff that went on around about Jackie.
Yes.
And just being black. And,
cool. Sure. Let alone baseball, let alone him being a star.
I mean, all you had to do is look and see what the Dodgers had to do in Vero Beach. They had to build a golf course on Dodger Town because Jackie was not allowed to play golf anywhere in Vero Beach because he was black.
Oh, that's interesting.
True story.
And that is interesting. That's interesting. In Vero Beach, that's a great story. Listeners out there, take hold of that. Vero Beach, Jackie Robinson, when he was down for spring training, the Dodgers had to build a separate golf course so the man could play golf.
Yeah.
How about that?
Play golf with his team.
Isn't that just it's a colorful story and it's vivid, but it certainly is a sad chapter in the history of our country.
Yes.
It is, but it still makes for a colorful, great story.
And a dear friend who he was a fair player by the name of Joe Morgan. A little Joe, when he was breaking into baseball, he told some really horrific tales. They had a minor league camp with the Houston Colt 45s. It was a brand new team, and in Georgia. And so all of a sudden, his first day there, manager, apparently there was like 2 or 3 young black.
That was also a beer, by the way, Colt 45.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And so they told him, "You're not leaving camp. You're here. You can't go anywhere." Wow. And all of a sudden, he goes into the outfield to do some running, and looks up and sees these hoods.
You're kidding me.
White hooded people walking behind that outfield wall and just trying to make his life miserable.
Yes.
That's how a guy from Oakland, California, who was used to all races.
Right. And openness, obviously, not equal, but at least open at that point.
Yeah. And so anyway, Joe said that was just
imagine different parts. Just take Jackie Robinson if they traveled around and played in different towns and different games. I mean, our country, because of the lack of connectiveness and the lack of information exchange, what we had was basically TV and the movies. You could have, pockets of our country that were still 10, 15 years behind.
Oh, sure.
In terms of race equality and race just that whole coming of age of of this whole division that we had in our country. So you could have a baseball team, say, like, for example, the Dodgers, that would travel, I don't know, to St. Louis or somewhere or wherever. That could be just crazy stuff.
Well, and the fact that Campy, Don Newcomb, and they couldn't stay in the same hotel. They had to go to a black hotel. They had to eat in a black restaurant. They couldn't eat with their teammates. Now, there was
Blackie. It's hard for me to grab that.
I know.
It's hard for me to grab it by the teeth and digest this.
Jackie, though, was a muckraker. And so that's why I love his story so much. And his wife has done such an amazing job.
He was a yellow journalist
with the foundation of, putting all of this together out there on what these guys really went through. And it was interesting because how did baseball integrate? You just think, okay, well,
and you were right there. Players. You were right there at the time when it was
actually, I was with the Hollywood Stars at the time, and that was interesting because we had this kid from the Caribbean, which is Roberto Clemente, and which was light years ahead of everybody else doing that. But,
didn't he die in a plane crash?
Yes,
he did. Yes,
humanitarian relief.
That's right.
But Jackie really went to bat for all of these other athletes, and
I don't think he let it bother him per se. It did because he wanted the cause ended, but
it was.
But he didn't let it take away from what his drive was in life.
No,
and his success. I mean, it didn't stop him. It maybe motivated him more. If I'm going to argue,
and
right, because a lot of things in life you can get stopped by the cause, or you can build on the cause and make it better.
Yeah,
It sounds like he did the latter.
He did. And well, you're not dealing, if you want to call him just like a regular jock. I mean, he was UCLA educated. He, got it. He was a sharp guy. Played several
I did not
sports.
know he was UCLA educated.
Oh yeah,
I did not know that.
Well, actually, they dedicated
Didn't know that.
what was Pauley Pavilion, which is now whatever the Jackie Robinson Plaza, and the track is right behind Pauley Pavilion, and it's all.
And you went to school
Jackie
right down there
Robinson
too,
everywhere.
didn't you?
Yeah, I went to a little Catholic college right up in the hill, Loyola University.
Yeah, Loyola.
Yeah. And but yeah, it was to see what has happened. But looking at, Jackie did what he did, and it was 54 or 56, 58.
See, that was
60.
right after you got kind of
into it.
54,
yeah.
You're 16. But I mean, that was when you started to see the changes.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's where I think Mr. Autry was really aware of, the African-American athlete.
Well, look at you saw Brian
well.
Gumbel. You said you were friends with him.
Well, yeah, that was
But I mean,
later
you
on
just
in the
later
70s.
on, but look we have an announcer.
Sure. Well,
and look how fast the doors opened.
Well, and that was very interesting too, because when Carol started anchoring, that was in the day when we television stations would only have one woman reporter anchor, if you will.
Yes.
And my desk mate was a young lady from the University of Arizona, Iola Johnson.
Oh.
And I'll never forget, we get a call after 10 o'clock news one night, and it was this high squeaky voice and wanted to talk to Iola. And she said, no, I don't want to talk to him. She said, a white guy or a black guy? I said, it's a white guy. She said, no, I don't want to talk to him. So anyway, it was 2 weeks later, calls back. And he just said, will you tell that young lady I've got a jet waiting at the airport to take her to Dallas, Texas, and make her the first black anchor in the history of Texas. And there she was, Iola Johnson, WFAA television.
Wow.
From KVOA in Tucson. Yeah. And then when Iola left, Carol got her spot. Yeah. At
this is
KVOA.
stuff.
Oh yeah. It's all it's behind the scenes stuff. But
this is the juice that everyone wants to. You don't read about this stuff, Greg.
Oh.
This is just stuff people love to hear about. For example, you with the history of baseball, it's anyone can look to statistics up. We can see what the Dodgers did. We can see what the Hollywood Stars. It doesn't matter. What matters is that when you discuss things, we get to hear the humanity of it, the culture of what happened at the time, and that's to me is the richness of the story. That's where it's at.
We had a player with the Dodgers, and I'll never forget. And again, this all became part of the 100-year show. Yeah. Don Newcomb.
Okay.
And this player, who, and this is 1990,
yep,
didn't, and he's in the Dodger organization, didn't know who Jackie Robinson was. And it's like, I thought, and Newcomb is huge. He's just a huge man.
Yeah.
And so I thought I was going to hold him down. We're sitting in the stands,
slap him silly
in the stands at Dodger Stadium. And I thought he was just going to elevate out of his chair.
Yes.
And he said, if anybody tells me that they don't know who Jackie Robinson is, and they're making all the money they're making today,
yes,
he said, Don Newcomb will take care of them. And I never forgot that. And I was thinking, oh God. But yeah, it's hard to imagine. And race is right in the middle of it. And, and in talking with Mr. O'Malley, this is years ago. He was telling me, he said, you know what the Dodgers are going to do next? And I said, well, no. He said, well, we've already done with the Caribbean. Dodgers were the first organization to have a camp in the Caribbean. Okay. By the way, the Mets have a beautiful camp
really?
in the Caribbean. Oh, yeah. A lot of the teams do. The Royals, a bunch of clubs. But anyway, the Dodgers were really the first to tap Korea. And what Mr. O'Malley has said, it just a matter of a few weeks ago, you haven't seen anything. Wait till we see the Chinese.
That's right.
And you have the discipline.
Yes,
You everything you need for, and it makes no difference what the sport is. And actually, this young kid who's, I guess, a freshman at Gonzaga, he's 7 feet tall, young Chinese kid.
Well, they're like you said, disciplined. They're spot on. It's like if you look at the martial arts, it's the same kind of thing. It's just that mindset. It's total discipline. That's all they think about it. And, well, it's kind of like in Bull Durham. I think it was Timothy Robbins in the movie Bull Durham and his concentration that Susan Sarandon gave him. But that's another story. That's another story. I think he wore something to keep his concentration.
That's yet another
chapter.
Side of
another chapter in that. But yeah, when that happens, and it will.
Oh yeah.
Another rumor I heard recently, my wife had told me, is I can't think of his name. He's on the show Shark Tank. He owns the Mavericks, the Dallas Mavericks basketball.
Oh, Mark Cuban.
He's trying to buy a baseball team, and they won't let him.
Yeah,
you've heard that. Oh yeah, he's trying.
When we were, I'll never forget. On WPSL, we had a computer show years ago. And Tony Zanini was a host, and he had this young kid from Indiana University, Mark Cuban, on. And so, anyway, he had this weird, he had this weird concept of an internet network. Yeah. So he called me back after the show, and he goes, "This is what I want to do. We got to get you on." I said, "Do you know where we are?" I said, "This is Port St. Lucie, Florida. This is, you're in Dallas. This is not gonna work." He said, No, that's the beauty of it. He said, "We're in urban settings, and you're out there." So anyway, WPSL was one of the first stations in America in 1996 to go up on the web, and we did through Mark Cuban's company. Which he
this is a great story.
Oh yeah,
this is a great story.
Yeah, and I'll never forget. Carol and I had him speak at the Florida Broadcasters, this is in Ponte Vedra. This is a country club, right?
Yes,
golf club. Here comes Cuban down the aisle, t-shirt, and shorts, and it's like these guys are all in suits and stuff, and he's going to tell them about the future of broadcasting. And they all look at him like, "Who the heck is this ding dong?"
Yeah. Well, you know what he's building? He's going to have the first stadium, which is where these kids play games and people watch. Is very interesting. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah,
it's as big. He's building one, and the rumor I've heard is the reason why I don't let him into baseball is because he wants to shake things up in a way that maybe the establishment doesn't want to be shaken up.
Exactly. Well,
he's got ideas.
That's what he's all about, though.
But it seems like he's successful at it. I'll be honest with you, Greg. Yes. It is working for him. He may shake up the standard and the guard, but he's doing something right.
Sure. Oh yeah,
he is doing something right.
But it's very funny how you can tie everything together, and in sports and business as well, because it's all really the same, and we're all going for market share of one.
Absolutely,
form or another.
Absolutely,
and in sports, it's the same. Although, you find every once in a while a diamond in the rough for a franchise, and as much as
you find a diamond in the rough for a player. I heard
Patriots.
I heard a story, I think, off the air about a 6'1" lady that can play baseball. Is that true? Her name was Susan Anton.
Oh God!
How about the Susan Anton story,
Greg?
Oh no! Before we go, the Susan Anton story.
That's another story for the ages. Part of our Dodger 100-year show. And by the way, if you go to the Baseball Hall of Fame, I don't know whether anybody's ever looked at that.
Where is the Baseball Hall of Fame?
In Cooperstown,
New
York.
New York.
Tapes are in there.
Yes, sir.
And 24-hour. We did a 24-hour Dodger marathon.
That's unprecedented.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And nobody's done it since either. Bill Finley was our producer. Bill Brandt was our executive producer. And
but again, the Dodgers are, next to I would say like the Yankees, they are the biggest franchise there is.
Oh yeah,
hands down.
And actually, I had some
times two of anybody.
Friends of the Yankee organization got, are you guys nuts?
Yes.
You know, and I said, well, you could really put together a wild show.
They certainly could.
You know, and they said, heck no.
Yes.
But yeah, it was amazing. We had Susan Anton taking batting practice with the Houston Astros, and their manager was just one of the best people in the world, Art Howe. And he was a good guy. And so they had a deal. And the pitching coach was sitting there going, she's going down. You know, and we're sitting there going, we could see the signs between the catcher and him.
Yes.
And thinking, oh no. I mean, so they did. They threw right in her hand, and she could.
And she was wearing, if I'm right, she was wearing white, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was wearing a white
blouse.
Oh yeah. Yep. And so anyway,
red clay, right? Red clay.
Red clay at Dodger Stadium.
Oh yeah.
And so anyway, she gets up, and kind of like the Babe Ruth point.
Yes.
To the left field wall at Dodger Stadium. She tattooed the next pitch on. It was one bounce to the left field wall.
Oh, that's incredible.
Major League Stadium.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
So then she's laughing, you know, she goes,
she
I
nailed
had
that thing.
3 older brothers.
She's 6'1", by the way, people. Big girl.
Oh my goodness. One of the great people. She was.
That sounds like that
marvelous.
100-year show that you did. I don't even think you could do it. You know, if it was today that we had to do it, I don't know if it could have been done.
No,
today.
it was one of the projects, I think, in all of my 25 years in television that I really had enough time to work on it. They gave me almost.
And you were instrumental in that
months.
show, in doing it.
And I call myself a segment producer, but yeah,
You were involved heavy.
Together. Yeah, I was. But, you know, Finley and Brandt were the guys who really did all that heavy lifting. And I just kind of put packages together and stuff.
But you were there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You were there.
But it was great because we tied the old Brooklyn Dodger announcers.
Yes.
Red Barber, of course, Vin Scully. He was in both sides.
Yes, sir.
And then Jerry Doggett and Vinny for the LA side, and Ross Porter and late Don Drysdale. Everybody had an integral role in that. And of course, what ended that night was the baseball game between the Astros and the Dodgers. But
it was 24 hours.
Yeah, 24 hours. We started Dodger Stadium. Vinny. Well, actually, Vin Scully did not kick it off. I had done a piece with President Reagan at his office in the Fox Plaza in Los Angeles.
You've met President Reagan.
Oh yeah. This goes back a million years too. But when I was a radio,
March 30th, 1981 is when it was attempted assassination.
When I was a radio reporter in, was it 68, People's Park, I was there at the demonstration in Berkeley. So, we went back a ways.
And he was quite a gentleman, wasn't he? Off the air as well.
Yeah,
and, you know, that's the one of the, I've always said that next to the great presidents that really shaped our history, I would have to say my favorite president because of how he was. And he was just a guy. One of his best friends, Ronald Reagan, was Tip O'Neill, who was a Democratic Speaker of the House. Yeah. Tip O'Neill. Tip O'Neill would sneak up to the White House office, to the White House. And they'd have scotch drinks 4 PM and negotiate deals.
Sure.
Isn't that just, to me, there's beauty in that.
Yeah, there is. And that's gone, but
it's gone now. Look, we can't even, I'm not even going to go there.
But you know, you think about that and the president was really, really good. And he kicked everything off. And then of course, Vinny is Vinny. He just, you know, he's our poet laureate of the Dodgers. And it was just an absolutely amazing night. We interviewed all but 2 of the living Dodgers in that 6 months that I was traveling all over the country.
You probably were recording things all over the place.
Yeah. And I did have, at the time, Pee Wee Reese was very ill. And so I had done some stuff with him in Vero Beach, in tandem with like our Dodger.
Had you been down to Vero Beach when you didn't even know about PSL yet, and your adventures here. Had you traveled any of the training sessions in Vero Beach at the time when you were over in Los Angeles?
Actually, my first touch at Vero Beach wasn't the Dodgers, but it was the New Orleans Saints when they were practicing at Vero Beach.
No kidding.
Yeah, when I was at ESPN. But yeah, when I was with the Dodgers, you walk through that complex in Vero. Have you been there?
I have not.
Oh,
I have not been, Greg.
You've got to go with the family because it's like the Dodgers. Oh gosh, I can't think of his name. Used to have a very famous photographer.
Okay.
Pictures all down this hallway.
So it's quite
back.
There's
it's like a Hall of Fame.
It's like a Hall of Fame.
It is like a Hall of Fame, and
and that's everyone out there. Go to the Vero Beach spring training for the Dodgers.
Dodger Town.
If you haven't been up there, Greg says you got to go.
Yep.
So that means you got to go.
Just go see. Yeah, just go see the pictures and stuff. Because
that's what I mean. It's worth the trip up there just to see it. And that's where the golf course is that you had mentioned.
Well, yeah, the one that Indian River County is going to buy.
Yes.
But yeah,
that was for Jackie Robinson.
But that's a special place. And I think when I did join the Dodgers, which is another crazy story, but when I joined the Dodgers, I was taken with Roy Campanella, who obviously the only Roy Campanella I saw as a kid was in a wheelchair because, he had gotten in the accident just in the year that they were moving out. So anyway, I'll never forget Mike Scioscia, who late of the California Angels.
Yes.
They let him go as manager, but Mike and Campy talking for hours. And, you just think, okay, Roy had this amazing concept of the game and Mike soaked it all up. And it was great.
It's kind of like me right here.
Yeah.
I'm soaking it up, Greg.
It was an amazing experience to watch that. And then, of course, our crazy experience in 1988 with Kirk Gibson in training camp. And we had a crazy shortstop at the time who decided to do something with Kurt's hat.
Yep.
And Kirk got really upset. And we saw a Michigan State football player in a baseball uniform that changed the entire season for the Dodgers. Needless to say, the last championship year for the LA Dodgers, 1988.
I know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And yeah, it's
good stuff.
Oh yeah. It's you talk about being blessed. I mean, this
we've been all of our listeners for the Crown Car Care Radio hour have been blessed having you on the show. Look how
I wouldn't go that far.
We're winding our hour down here. I think we have a few more minutes.
Yeah, we've got about 6 minutes left.
6 minutes. I wanted to tell everyone out there that, Greg, you were heavily involved with ESPN at the infancy. You had mentioned it earlier in the show that NBC they called it ESP, and then it became ESPN. I know you were right there at the ground floor.
One of the original seven.
Original seven, as it was. You got anything you can comment on maybe for the last part of our show? Tell us a little bit about ESPN and maybe some of your adventures there.
Early days in Bristol. It was truly
in
amazing.
Bristol?
Yep, Bristol, Connecticut.
Yep.
And of course, I was from San Diego, and
so you were an out of towner,
and go, where is this place?
Yeah.
And like Carol was with me the first time we went, and it looked like, okay, where are we? There's nothing but cows. There's nothing but farms, and then all of a sudden, wham! These huge satellite dishes, and it looks like you're on the moon. And that was ESPN. In the early days, we only had 2 buildings. They now have, 100 and some odd acres. I'm not sure how much. It's amazing. They've grown so much. But what's been kind of interesting the last couple of years, Carol and I have had some visits. Our former chief photographer Jeff Israel was here in town last year, and and Bob Lee, the last original anchor, was down here last week visiting.
And you got to visit him.
Yeah, Bob and Barb.
And he was one of the originals with you.
Yep, he was one of our kids. And there were 2 of us with a lot of news experience, George Grand and myself. George had actually been a news director in New Haven. And so I took 2 guys under my belt, and that was
kind of how you
Bob
had done,
Lee.
how you had done with how your start began too. You had somebody, the guy with the notepad.
Yeah, Bob Lee and late Tom Mees, and they were both like absolute sponges, and
of course
they got it. And of course, Bob has been anchoring outside the lines for 20 some odd years.
Fabulous.
And he's been there for 40 years. Yeah,
so
it's an incredible story. It could not be recreated now, just simply because of the cost.
That's right. There was a lot of things that were done at the time that you couldn't do.
We were luckily owned by Getty Oil, and I'll never forget the chairman of Getty Oil. When we opened the LA office,
I did not know that.
I was
owned by Getty Oil.
Yes, yeah. I was. We really didn't have an office, so they put me in the Getty building. Yeah. And it happened to be 6 doors down from the chairman of the board.
Oh my!
Are you kidding me? And so we were a bunch of crazy guys.
Yeah, sure.
And it was like, oh no. So anyway, he told me one day, we were walking down the hall. He said, you guys are so damn lucky that you're owned by an oil company, because, we couldn't care less that we're losing $150,000 a day. And that's what it was. And
that quote, it's a great quote.
And they got it all back when ABC bought them.
They got it all back. But that is just, it's classic. I mean, that's like,
oh yeah.
And he said it to you. That's just great stuff.
No,
you won't read about that. You won't Google that. You won't find that anywhere.
And it's not the ESPN
right from Greg
either.
Wyatt's memories. And he's speaking here live on the Crown Car Care Radio Hour. I hope everyone has enjoyed this. We have about 2 minutes left on the show. And it's been a run. I've heard Greg speak before, but I have never heard the Susan Anton story. I have not heard the Paperboy story. I have certainly not heard the Getty Oil story. And to me, that is just fabulous. And the Jackie Robinson story that we went over, boy, that's a dark part of some of our history in the United States. But I will tell you, Greg, you've added some interesting light to it. And I know all of our listeners have enjoyed you tremendously here on the air. And again, you're welcome. Anytime you want to come back and talk baseball, talk ESPN, talk sports, you know where to find us. 5:00 every Monday here at the WSTU 1450 AM studios here right off Federal Highway, right at the foot of the Roosevelt Bridge. Yep. And I'm just blessed to be here on this show. I'm blessed to have you, Greg, as the owner of this radio station. And I have been blessed even more, as so of our listeners, to have you as a guest today. And all I can say is thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all these wonderful stories that we could probably never hear, never research, or never know about unless you had told them to us today.
Play ball.
Ball.
Yeah. And don't forget, spring training with the Mets.
Yes, spring training's coming up. Yeah,
spring training with the Mets begins.
Yeah, when's the first?
On February 23 with the Atlanta Braves, and then the world champion.
And you'll be broadcasting those
games.
Oh, yeah.
Well, actually, it all depends. Okay. We don't have the Mets spring training schedule as far as broadcast goes.
Yes,
they're back on
there's a chance.
WFAN in New York. So
great.
We'll see what happens.
What a great hour.
This has been fun.
Sure has.
This has been fun.
Everyone have a great week and make it prosperous and successful.
This is WSTU, Stewart. And WSTU on Alexa and Google Home worldwide.